real quick, make sure there's a drawer in there.
Are you going to keep this on?
No, that one's leaking. But anytime I'm not in here.
Right. Okay.
It's tough for me to bless them, just from a safety standpoint. I want to keep them healthy before their wedding. If you could sit down, put your hands down, or just sit over there, because I'm going to have them stand kind of in front of your spot.
When is it going to be?
It's right before the sermon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be like here, and we'll just kind of have them stand out here.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
I'm going to sit down
That
during
way they'll be
your
on screen, and they'll be far away from everybody.
Okay.
That's the goal. Yeah. We want to make sure they stay healthy before their wedding. Praise God.
Whew.
Do you want to introduce Return Again while I noodle?
Sure. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to begin, as we have for the last few weeks now, for this month of Elul. We are preparing our souls. We're preparing our minds and our souls for the High Holy Days. And therefore, we started a couple weeks ago with a song that said, "Create a pure heart." And then last week, can't remember now what we did. We did another song last week. And, we did the Return Again 2 weeks ago. Last week was Create a Pure Heart. And this song, Return Again, is a song that Rabbi Chasen wrote. And it is in our Slichot prayer book, these words. And it really just tells us, it teaches us about really coming back to who we are, the essence of who we are at these High Holy Days. So I hope you'll join with us. The words are at the top of your handout. It's a white paper.
Return again. Please join me. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. Let's try that again. I want to hear you guys.
Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul.
Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are. Born and reborn again. Return again. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are. Born and reborn again. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return again. Return again. Return return to the land of your soul. It is heavenly to see all of you, for us to be together in this space, spaced and masked, a little distance, but outdoors, and still enjoying the great gift of one another's company as we welcome Shabbat with one another. Welcoming Shabbat, we're going to join together in the Psalms and in the words of the Kabbalists, the traditional pathway that we have into creating Shabbat. But before we do that, one of the things I absolutely love most about the Jewish tradition is that it's based upon the language of Hebrew, and that the language of Hebrew is itself a commentary on almost every teaching in the tradition. If you dig into a word in the Hebrew language, it has all of its own expoundings to be taken from it, because it's a root-based language. That is to say, every word in Hebrew has a 3-letter root at its center, and then there's all kinds of embellishment that goes on around it, but it's still based upon that one core word. And so the word I wanted to talk with you about is, of course, the word Shabbat. As we prepare, as the sun is disappearing, it's already down beyond the horizon, but we still have the great gift, because it's summertime and the days are long. We're gathered here welcoming Shabbat. It's not actually officially the sundown quite yet, but there's daylight left. We can still see the horizon over to the west, but bit by bit, as we pray together, it will become dark here, and it will be the electronic lights that help us to see one another, see the words in the prayer book, and see our way forward into the dark of the evening. But the Hebrew word Shabbat, we all know that Shabbat means Sabbath, day of rest, literally means rest, restoration. But the Hebrew root, Shabbat, or the noun form of the person who does it, which would be shovet, the person who does Shabbat, doesn't only mean the person who observes the Sabbath. The word is also used to describe a person engaging in a labor strike. Striking to cease working is taken from the same Hebrew root. I want you to think about that for a second. So I was thinking about sharing that with you tonight. I was kind of digging into, well, what does it mean that they chose to link all of that up together? It suggests, at least to me, that there is an intention about Shabbat, that it is on some level a little bit subversive, right? That the Sabbath is not something that just, oh good, every seventh day it comes and we have this opportunity to rest. It's all true. However, it actually takes a bit of an act of subversion to actually make Shabbat. In the same way that the default position is working and the one who is striking is making a subversive decision of the natural order to suspend it and to create a rest with a purpose, a cessation with an intention. So too Shabbat should be exactly that. Requires that we cease for a purpose, and that we have to overthrow the natural order. And by that I don't only mean that 6 days we work and then the 7th day we rest. I mean we have to overthrow the natural order to actually be among those who make Shabbat, as opposed to those who take it for granted, who allow it to pass, who don't actually harvest its gift. That's what you're doing. All of you here with us in person, all of you here with us on screen. You have decided to engage in the subversive act of setting aside the norm and creating a cessation with a purpose. Let our purpose together tonight as we celebrate this Shabbat be for creating greater blessing in our lives, in the lives of those with whom we share life, and in a world that desperately needs the subversive act that we are all embracing together tonight in community. The supplemental page includes some of the words of the psalmist that were chosen by the mystics to be among the pathway words, the words we would speak and sing as a way into Shabbat. L'chunu ranana, let us experience and express joy to our God through song. I invite you to join with me.
This is also on your supplement.
Let us sing out to God, the maker of all, sure and strong. Let all of creation from mountain to sea hear our song. Lechu neranena, yai lai 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 lai, la-Adonai, yai lai lai lai, Nahariya, Nahariya, yai lai 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 lai, Litzur Yishenu, yai lai 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 lai, for all of the wonder and all of God's light, we rejoice. So now let us listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice. Lechu neranena,
Lechu neranena, yai lai lai lai,
yai lai lai lai
la-Adonai, yai la 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 la, Nahariya,
The mystics were the ones who created this metaphor of the Sabbath being a cosmic wedding between our people and our God. That is the magic that we're supposed to imagine in this moment as we sing L'Chadodi. The words can be found on pages 20 and 21. We're going to sing the first two verses. It's the top of page 20, and then the top and bottom verses on page 21. And as we do so, see her, the Sabbath bride, dressed in white, and allow yourself to sense the anticipation that a wedding creates, that feeling of hope, of promise for tomorrow. Shabbat is supposed to be a little taste of the messianic future. It's supposed to be a little glimpse of what tomorrow could be. That's what a wedding does for us all the time. Let this wedding do that for all of us as a community as we celebrate Shabbat, pages 20 and 21. Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamiyuchad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litila lecha dodi, Likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי היא מקור הברכה מראש מקדם משוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה top of 21 התעוררי התעוררי היבעורך קומי אורי 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 שיר דברי כבור אליי עלייך נגלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה. I invite you, if you're able, to stand at this time and to face the entrance to this outdoor chapel. The custom that the Kabbalists left to us was that we would look to the entrance of the place where we are praying as we sing this last verse of Lecha Dodi, so that we'd have a little physical help in imagining the bride's arrival. See her, feel her. Boi v'shalom hateret bala gam b'simcha u'v'tzola toch emunei am segula boi chala boi chala lecha dodi לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה. Page 28. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Baruch Adonai Havorach la 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 la, ya 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 la la. As we prepare for the recitation of Shema, words that can be found in the prayer book on page 34. These words of poetry by Devon Spire, words that help us to speak to the power of listening. Shema, we know, is a call to listen, to hear, and to attest to what we can hear from this proclamation of unity that we're about to make together in reciting Shema. This time of year, the metaphor of the shofar is deep, deep, deep within us as we prepare for the greeting of a new year. And so these words to prepare us for Shema. He wrote, "It is a wonder. The shofar is shaped like the inside of an ear, because at the moment we are blasted with sound and our whole world becomes the ancient voice, longing, calling, demanding. We are meant to listen to whom is below noise. And there, underneath the usual commands and allegiances, is Torah, listening and weeping in all the invisible, eternal ink." I am here, I am now, asking when, asking how, only I, only thou, only one.
Fill my heart, still my soul. I am part of this whole. I will sing out my soul to the one.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai, Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai, Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam, Leolam, Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai, Echad.
Please join me in the Ve'ahavta on page 36. Ve'ahavta
et
Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha
ובכל נפשך
ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה
Asher Anochi Metzavecha Hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha Vedibarta bam Beshivtecha bevetecha Uvelechtecha baderech Ushochbecha uvekumecha Ukshartam leot al yadecha Vehayu letotafot beinenecha Uchtavtam hamezuzot beitecha Uvisharecha Leman tiskeru Vasitem et kol mitzvotai V'item kedoshim leloechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. Some words to help prepare us for Micha Mocha, words found on page 41. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect. The song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. The song is found on page 40. Mi chamocha vaylim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Mi chamocha vaylim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef pelech, Nora tehilot osef pelech, Adonai yimloch leolam vaed. Malchutecha ra'u banecha, pokei hayam livnei Moshe uMiriam. Ze'elianu ve'amru, Ze'elianu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch leolam vaed. Ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la ya la la, 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 Adonai yimloch leolam vaed. If you'll turn back to the supplemental page, you'll find the words of Hashkivenu, our nighttime prayer. With one voice, let us acknowledge the arrival of night, of darkness, and commit ourselves to being for one another the light. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom, L'shalom. V'ha'amidenu Malkeinu L'chaim. Ufros aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha,
Ufros aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, Ufros aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha. Amen.
Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. Amen. The Amidah begins on page 46. If you're able, I invite you to stand. Adonai, Sefatai tiftach, ufi tehillatcha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekoneh Hakol, Vezocher Hastei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo Be'ava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah, Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatah, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umidol Melach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom, Yehalelucha Selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el
Kadosh.
We continue the Amidah in silence through page 62. It's also an opportunity for those who'd like to turn away from the prayer book and turn inward to commune with the prayers that reside deep within your own heart. As we spend this time in quiet prayer, I invite you to remain standing or to be seated whenever you're ready. On page 62. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav, huya say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. We say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. We say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru So I made a big deal out of this subversive thing called Shabbat that we're doing here tonight. But some Shabbatot are even more special for the rabbi, at least, than other Shabbatot. This one extremely special for me because I have the opportunity tonight to share words of blessing with my very first bar mitzvah at Leo Beck Temple, who is now, 2 weeks from now, going to be married. And all that means is I am very old. And that's okay. Being old beats the hell out of the alternative, so I am good with being old. And Jason Bendat, back in September of 2003, I was only here for a couple of months at the time that Jason Bendat, he was a lot like me. He reminded me a little bit of me back at that time because he was a late bloomer physically too. We were both among the smallest kids in our grade at the time of bar mitzvah. And I remember Jason wanted to read from our Sephardic Torah scroll. It was very important to him that he would read from, that's the one that I hold during Kol Nidre, that big, heavy one in the wooden box, the blue wooden ornate box that the scroll is inside. And me being relatively new, the Bendats being a long time committed members of this congregation, the last thing I wanted to do was tell Jason no. So I'm like, okay, sure. And of course, the Torah was somewhere between 1 and 2 times Jason's size. And Jason took that Torah, and God bless him, he's walking around the Torah, around the sanctuary with that Torah, arms wrapped around that thing, a little bit like this. But I'll tell you something, that Torah did not know a moment's danger, Jason Bendat. Did not. And Jason was my first bar mitzvah here at this temple, and he's been waiting a long time. He and Haley have been waiting a long time. This one's working. Or maybe this one's working. God bless Drew Davis. Ladies and gentlemen, Drew Davis. And those of you who are at home, if it weren't for Drew Davis, you wouldn't have ever experienced a single thing we've done for the last year and a half. I just want to point that out. So God bless Drew Davis. He is keeping our community together in a big, big, big way. Thank you, Drewski. In any case, yes, they've been waiting to allow the waters of COVID to part at least a little bit so that they could celebrate with loved ones and cherished friends. And that celebration begins with us tonight. They're going to actually be celebrating right at the very, very end of this year, 5781. They're squeezing it in right before Rosh Hashanah, but we get the opportunity a couple of weeks in advance to celebrate with them for the very first time here together. And so it is my pleasure to invite Jason Bendat and Haley Rich to come forward for words of blessing in advance of their marriage. So Jason and Haley, you guys let's play it safe, Pick. That gets you on camera. That's true. Take one step toward me. Can everybody, Drewski? Can the folks at home see Jason? Is that working? More. That's good. Okay. How about if I go like this now? All right. So Jason and Haley, you likely already know that our tradition expresses a certain wonderment at the miracle of one soul finding another soul. There's something kind of magical in this, and we can never hope to understand the mystery that ultimately guides one person to another, one person filled with love to give to another person who is ready to receive that love and return it as only he, as only she can. There is a special holiness to that mystery, God's touch, a special embrace that has been reserved just for the two of you. In Yiddish, they call that beshert. It's the suggestion that since the creation of the world, these two souls were destined to be joined together under the chuppah, as you will be in just a couple of weeks' time from now. But I've always had a bit of discomfort with this notion of beshert, I will say, Maybe it comes from working with so many couples at so many different stages of their married lives. But bashert, to me, really makes it sound a little too easy. Like a shared destiny is somehow magically going to sustain you, leaving you free to be inattentive to the challenge of sustaining the growth that will happen between you in these coming years. No, bashert or not, nothing is handed to you for free in marriage. It is a beautiful dance, but a dance it is, replete with plenty of steps that you feel you don't know, and plenty of changes in the music that you never could have seen coming. You guys, of course, have already discovered this, hoping to get married some time ago and having the world interfere. You will have to have your eyes wide open, both of you, and your hearts wide open to keep up with the changes in the music, to sustain each other, and to sustain what you now celebrate that exists between you. What might inspire you to make that happen? Well, it is taught in the Zohar, the greatest of the mystical texts in our tradition, that woman and man, together, truly as one, joined, they are worthy of beholding the Shekhinah, the divine presence. That's the gravity of what you are undertaking together a couple of weeks from now. You want to know how God gets into this world? It happens when the two of you, in love and in respect, work to nourish and nurture the love that called you to join your lives together. And so it's a big job, but it is the best kind of job that exists out there. It's great work if you can get it. And together you will bring us all a glimpse of God's light that our world so deeply needs, especially now. You will always be able to look back. We will always be able to, your loved ones, your families joined here together tonight, be able to look back not only at your getting married, but the when of your getting married. And it's not just disadvantage and inconvenience. It is the light that the two of you bring to a moment that's been filled with too much darkness in our country and all over the world. You guys bring that light, God's light, access for all of us to the Shekhinah. And so to offer you strength and blessing on that journey, I want to ask the oldest blessing in our tradition, goes all the way back to the Torah, the Birkat HaKohanim, the priestly benediction. My dear friend, Rabbi Stuart Vogel, is going to stand under the chuppah with these two guys. We are wrestled for it, but it's all good. Stuart is a friend of mine for literally 35 years, so we can share. Good friends can do that. But he will also bring you this blessing under the chuppah on the night of your wedding. But for now, from our community to you, these sacred words of blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you safe in one another's love. Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine upon you just as brightly as it does on this night filled with love, on all the days and nights that you'll share. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence always be felt around you, within you, most especially between you, so you might know every blessing of love and health and peace from this day forward and forever. Amen. I want to give all these guys the opportunity to participate in blessing you too. I shouldn't get to hog the honor. And so if you guys open up to page 344 in the prayer book, if you need it, you got the words that give thanks for the blessing of a moment. These guys gave us the blessing of a moment by extending the joy of their wedding day into this night. A couple of weeks in advance, we get the opportunity vicariously to be with them under the chuppah. And so We praise you, God, for giving us the gift of life and sustaining us so we might all be joined together on this first night of celebrating your marriage to be. Please join with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Shabbat Shalom and Mazal Tov in advance. For those of you who were rejoicing that my mic conveniently went out right before the sermon, sorry, Drewski, he's always here. Some of you already know that I grew up in a suburb of Kansas City named Overland Park, Kansas. In some ways, Overland Park was a lot like the friendliest neighborhoods here in Los Angeles. In other ways, though, Overland Park was actually quite different from LA. Most specifically, I encountered a religious landscape that was altogether different. Now, it's not what some of you who have never been to Kansas City and are probably thinking I would just as soon never be to Kansas City might be thinking. That is to say, there are actually Jews in Overland Park, Kansas. We were not the lone Jewish family, as you might be imagining. Dorothy, Toto, and a few Heimewitzes and Goldbergs as well. I actually had several Jewish neighbors in our neighborhood, and it's just that I had far more Christian neighbors, and most of them were as serious about their Christian identity as my family was about its Jewish identity. I certainly couldn't count on my school being closed on the High Holy Days, and a few Christmas carols always managed to sneak their way into our winter choir concert. But none of this proved detrimental to my emerging Jewish identity as a youngster. In fact, if anything, it strengthened my Jewish sense of self, since the communal curiosity about things religious often placed me in the position of describing Judaism to interested non-Jews. They, in turn, explained Christianity to me. It was a wonderful and a respectful exchange, and I can happily report that I never felt like I lost out because I wasn't a part of Christmas, nor did I envy any of my Christian friends for their other holidays or practices, except for one. See, I was a pretty typical Midwestern Jewish boy. Think Woody Allen without the Manhattan affect. My parents, who are praying with us online right now, could affirm, if they were here, that angst and guilt may not have been my two best friends, but still we were very, very close. And so one day I'm sitting around talking with the Catholic kid who lives next door. And here I discover in my own grossly oversimplified way that my Catholic friends can go talk to their priest in private whenever they want, tell him about all their guilt, and then walk away with a clean slate, a relieved conscience, and God's forgiveness, no less. Forget about Christmas. I had never been so jealous in my entire life. I would have given anything for that easy a trick to get off the hook. Well, fortunately, I happened to be enrolled in a comparative religion class in my Sunday school at the time. And so the next Sunday comes rolling around, and I show up to class early, and I'm beset with envy. And I declare to my teacher, a guy named Mr. Rubin, how come we don't have something like confession? And he says to me, well, we've got something better than confession. And he walks me over to the bookshelf, and he pulls down a copy of the Machzor, that's the High Holy Days prayer book, and he opens up to Kol Nidre, perhaps the most fabled Jewish prayer of all time, right? And he says, read for me the English translation of Kol Nidre out loud. And so I take the book in hand, and I read Kol Nidre in English, something that probably very few of you have ever done, just listening to it chanted in the Hebrew, right? So here's Kol Nidre in the English as I read it to him. Let all our vows and oaths, all the promises we make, and the obligations we incur to you, O God, between this Yom Kippur and the next, be null and void, should we, after honest effort, find ourselves unable to fulfill them. Then may we be absolved of them. There you go, says Mr. Rubin, smiling at me. Advance confession for a full year. And of course, I am just blown away. Wow, you mean to tell me that I have confessed for a year's worth of broken promises before I've even broken them? That is the idea, he says. So you still want Catholic confession? I'm like, no, this is fine. You're right. Jewish confession is better. It's like, repentance on the layaway plan. I like that. And that was the end of my discussion with Mr. Rubin, who I sincerely hope is no longer teaching the comparative religion class at my home temple. You see, while what he said should have brought me some comfort, even as a young kid, something seemed not quite right about the way he described that to me. I had a hunch that Kol Nidre, as Jewish confession with payment in advance, was just too simple. And that hunch was validated when I first got to look closely at this week's Torah portion, Ki Tetzei. Now, the portion is not especially beautiful. It's not filled with engaging narrative or moving poetry. It is, as I indicated in the congregational email message that I sent out right around noon today, it is just a lengthy collection of laws, 72 of them in all, according to our great medieval teacher, the Rambam. And they're not arranged in any systematic fashion either. Women's rights, humane treatment of animals, sexuality, human rights, business law, legal procedure, it's all in there, one after another after another. But if you look closely amid the sea of laws in this week's Torah portion, you'll find one that stands out from all the rest. And it stands out because it, more than any of the others, speaks to the mindset of Jewish people at this very moment of the year. And it sounds very, very different from Kol Nidre. In Hebrew, Ki tidor neder l'Adonai Elohecha lo te'acher l'shalmo. In English, when you make a vow to Adonai your God, do not put off fulfilling it. For Adonai your God will require it of you, and you will have incurred guilt. Now just think about the ramifications of that statement. It would appear that the Torah and Kol Nidre have a few things to work out between them. And while Kol Nidre is an important, even a seminal prayer in our tradition, you won't find it in the Torah. The historians tell us that Kol Nidre's origins are unknown. We don't know who wrote it, and we don't know when they wrote it either. We do know, however, that it was in existence at least as early as the Gaonic period, which means it is at least 1,000 years old or older. We also know that it was introduced into the liturgy in spite of the opposition of rabbinic authorities, who couldn't ignore the way it flew directly in the face of the Torah's command in this week's portion to honor our promises to God and to others. And for this reason, Kol Nidre came under attack repeatedly across the generations. It was even expunged removed from many Western European prayer books as recently as the 1800s. And it has frequently been used by Christians during times of Jewish persecution by Christians to support the claim that Jewish promises aren't worth trusting because they've got Kol Nidre, the easy out. So it sort of removes a little of the luster from Kol Nidre for all of us, doesn't it? But according to the words that we read from the Torah, every year around this time, every year right as the High Holy Days are beginning to kind of creep into our consciousness and feel imminent, God does expect us to live up to those promises after all. Now that expectation has far-reaching implications in my life, and I trust that it does in yours as well. You see, I remember last year's High Holy Days almost as if they were yesterday. I remember our intense effort here at the temple to come up with a way to bring our community together to greet a new year while knowing that we would remain physically apart. And sadly, this year's High Holy Days will be more of the same, at least when it comes to our main sanctuary services on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But we now know that we can succeed in doing that hard self-work of these upcoming High Holy Days under these strange pandemic conditions. We've done it before now. And when I look back on my own prayerful search during our services last fall, I remember being undeterred in pouring my heart out to God and to myself. I admitted my failings during the year that had passed, and I vowed to do better, to try harder in this year that has now nearly ended. I made more than a few nidre, more than a few promises, vows, during those services last fall, and even while being unable to see you eye to eye, I was certain that I could feel the gravity of you, the gravity of hundreds of others spiritually at work. Maybe you were among them, making promises of your own. If you are like me, your performance with regard to those vows that you made has been mixed at best. You can probably think of a few commitments to which you've really held true and never forgotten. You can also probably think of at least as many that never really got off the ground. Surely you know those ones. They're probably the same promises that you made the year before, and perhaps the year before that. And in just a few more weeks, it'll be time for us to hear Cantor Cates chanting Kol Nidre once again. And we will pray that God will pardon us once again when next year passes and the same promises again go unfulfilled. That just isn't good enough. That is an abuse of Kol Nidre. And we might be tempted to commit that abuse if it weren't for the more authoritative words of this week's Torah portion that you're here to hear tonight. The words which remind us that what we made last Yom Kippur were, in fact, promises, vows, oaths. We asked God to watch, and then we made promises. We're expected to keep them. And it's our good fortune that the Torah reminds us of that just before it gets to being too late. You see, tonight marks the beginning of the 13th day of the month of Elul, the last month on the Hebrew calendar before Rosh Hashanah. In 2.5 weeks, we'll all be celebrating the arrival of a new year, and then 9 days later, Yom Kippur will be upon us. Not a lot of time left, but enough. There's still enough time for us to take stock of the promises we made a year ago and have failed to deliver on. There's still time for us to make the honest effort that Kol Nidre requires of us before daring to ask God's forgiveness once again. There is still time. There is a rabbinic teaching associated with Yom Kippur that I trust is familiar to many of you. It informs us that Yom Kippur only grants atonement for transgressions against God. In order to achieve atonement for our transgressions against other people, you have to seek their pardon. You can't just ask God. And so these days during the month of Elul are traditionally devoted to that very important work, to tracking down those whom we have wronged in the past year and asking their forgiveness. It's a worthwhile task, to be sure. But in order for Yom Kippur to work its magic, to wipe the slate clean on our transgressions against God, we've got a little homework to do on that as well. We've got to hear God imploring us through the Torah's words this week. Do not put off fulfilling those promises that you made when only you and I were listening, says God. Don't assume I'll forgive so easily. Don't assume you'll forgive yourself so easily. Look at yourself, your marriage, your children, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your friends, your business associates, your school classmates. Remember the obligations that you took upon yourself in those moments of spiritual discovery a year ago. The vows still hold, but there's still time. Make them real, says God. And so, on this Shabbat, as I mentioned in the email message that I sent out this afternoon, I want to share a few guiding questions with you and give you the first of what I hope will actually be many installments of meaningful, quiet time during these final days leading to the High Holy Days so that you can consider them. And so I want to encourage you to close your eyes, even if that's not your thing. Close your eyes, or perhaps just to rest them gently in front of you, and to situate your body in a comfortable but attentive way, to feel your feet resting on the ground and your spine drawing upward from your seat. And then take a couple of deep breaths. Notice your breath, that constant force of life, drawing in and drawing out, reaching out. With your eyes still closed, with your bodies still ready to receive, let's look back upon our decisions of the past year regarding the way that you chose to spend your time. Open up your calendar in your mind's eye. Look closely and critically at how you spent your time. Was it mostly work? Mostly play? Too much play? Not enough? Was there time that you gave on behalf of our community? Was there time, not just lip service, donated to those in need in a year where the need around us ran especially high? Did your loved ones get enough of your time? And what was the quality of that time? What did you fail to make time for? Regarding the way you chose to spend your money this year, see if you can perform a little soulful audit of your checkbook and credit cards. What did you spend your money on this year? Yourself? Those you love? Recreational enjoyment? Necessities? Maybe those things that we've allowed ourselves to think are necessities? And to what degree were those expenditures balanced by the Jewish value of tzedakah, of giving to those who have greater need than you do? The Torah calls upon us to budget and spend 10% of our annual earnings on tzedakah, 10%. Very, very few of us ever even approach that standard from our tradition. So how close did you get? And what gifts did you neglect to make, convincing yourself that you didn't have enough to give, or that someone else would do the giving? Concerning matters of health, in the year 5781? What did you choose to put into your body this year? How did your eating or your dieting harm your body? How did it sanctify your body? How did you improve or sustain your physical conditioning? Did you fail to do so? Has illness, yours or that of someone you know, changed the way you treat your body? And during this uniquely perilous year in global health, did you do your part? Are you doing your part to end this pandemic? Did you get vaccinated when you could? Have you willingly masked up? Or have you been deterred by the nuisance? Have you made the hard choices about not going and not doing as you wish? What is your record as a global citizen at this one-of-a-kind moment in human history? Turning to thoughts of our families. Think for a few moments of your loved ones, each person at a time if you can. Mother, father, spouse, sister, brother, child, grandchild. How did you express your appreciation for them? How did you hurt them? Did you exploit their weakness? Did you support them at critical times? How attentive were you to their pain and to their joy? Were there sources of conflict between you? Could you do something more than you've done to reduce those conflicts in the remaining weeks of this year? Regarding the way you chose to impact the world beyond just the pandemic during this year 5781. Did you rise to respond as fully as you could to gross injustices? Or did talking about it or emailing about it masquerade as a response? Did you truly do what you could to reduce oppression in this city, in this state, in this country? Did you close your heart to the cries of people in faraway lands who somehow seem less real to us? I'll invite you when you're ready to open your eyes. Notice your breath. And to sit peacefully, honestly, with all the truth that has been rummaging around inside you during these past few minutes. This is the time. Now, not the high holy days. Now, before them, to prepare for confronting our spirits. This is the time to look truthfully at who we are and who we aren't. This is the time to seek out those we've hurt with words or deeds, with silence or with our inaction, and to ask for forgiveness. Because there's still time now. May our efforts in these last weeks of 5781 demonstrate that we are people who are true to our word. And let our pleas for forgiveness at the dawn of 5782 be worthy of a compassionate response because of the effort we're about to make in these last couple of weeks. In just a few moments, we're going to hear, as we do throughout this month of Elul, we're going to hear the call of the shofar, the sound of eternity urging us, beckoning us back to those promises still lying dormant. Let us spend just a few quiet moments now readying ourselves for the shofar blast, readying ourselves to complete the work of this year before next year arrives, allowing this sound to mingle with all the other sounds now reverberating inside you. It's our custom, while embracing words of Torah, allowing them to illuminate us, change us, lead us to growth, to call to mind and to heart those in our personal circles of community, friendship, family, work, school, those who are struggling with life itself as we gather on this night and drink in the riches of collective experience, being part of a community. It means those who are struggling with illness, with brokenness, with despair, those who are broken by disillusionment. We want to bring them some measure of the joy of this Shabbat that we are creating with one another. And so I want to invite anyone who'd wish to speak aloud the name of someone in your personal circle who you'd like to include in our collective prayer for healing on this Shabbat to stand at this time. And when my eyes meet yours, if you can speak aloud those names to our congregation. For those of you joining us online as well, please take advantage of this time to speak those names aloud. For all of them, for all of us, we join together in words of prayer for healing and light. Words of Misha Berach can be found in the middle of page 253. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu of strength, who blessed the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Nishebera imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Our concluding prayer, Aleinu, can be found at the bottom of page 282. If you're able, please rise.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet kedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, vanachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך
Oh, page 287.
ונאמר לאדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד.
Some special words to help us prepare for the recitation of the Kaddish prayer words not found in the prayer book. Our angels spend much of their time sleeping in their dreams. They tear down the new houses by the sea and build old ones in their place. No matter how long they may sleep, 100, 200 years, 10 centuries, is not too much. The first to wake up takes the torch that has been handed down, adds a drop of oil to the lamp, blesses the eternal light, and then recalls the name of every other angel. And one by one, as they are remembered, they wake up. For them, as for us, there is nothing more beautiful than memory. As we prepare to recite the Kaddish prayer this evening, we remember especially Charles Richard Kleeman, husband of Annette Kleeman and father of Maura Resnick, whom death has taken from us in recent days. And we link his name with Morris Billet, Leo Block, Mark Charles Bloom, Eric J. Bram, Murray W. Brownstein, Bertha Brownstein, Shirley Chemis, Roger H. Davis, Sidney Foreman, Jenny Gottlieb, Bertha Groby, Bedros Hagopian, Arthur Heyman, Robert Allen Kleiman, Judy Lamb, George Irwin Levitt, Florence Smuckler-Mirisch, Herman Morrison, William Resnick, Sylvia Shane, Herman Elliott Snyder, Jeffrey Taylor, Clara R. Weidberg, Dave Wolf, Bud Yorkin, Margaret Kamen Zeisman. Are there other names we should include? If so, please speak them aloud. We think as well of all those who we name in our hearts, and those who have perished, millions around the world, from COVID-19, and all of those who have lost their lives as innocent victims in violence. We have been once again horrified during this past week to see violence erupting in new corners of the world. And so for those who have perished, we hold them close at heart along with all those who we name in our hearts. As we say, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the memory of the righteous is an everlasting blessing. Together let us give thanks for the blessing of life with the words of Mourner's Kaddish found on page 294. If you're able, please rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei. B'chai echon uvyom echon. Uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvisman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal. Shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiram be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. May the giver of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved among us, and let us together say, Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat